It's a very feeble recovery, if any. A lot of it has been done with accounting tricks. Max Kaiser has done a wonderful job at his website and on his programs revealing what the banks have been doing. I mean, how is it possible, for example, for American banks to report huge increases in income and have their stocks go up when all they're doing is releasing reserve accounts on their balance sheet? When American companies are deleveraging, that is, they're not seeking loans. How is it possible to have such profitable banks? How is it profitable for so many other companies? How much of this is real? And if people go to Max Kaiser's website, they'll learn that very little of this is real.
Okay, how much of that is real? So what do you mean exactly when you say that, Mr. Foote?
Well, as an accounting professor, I teach my students that the purpose of accountants is to make honest representations of the economic well-offness of companies. If, in fact, you're playing games with the accounts and you are creating reserve accounts and releasing reserve accounts and playing other accounting tricks, you are publishing false financial statements. This is what has been happening. The external auditors have not done a good job of policing this. Obama himself was brought in by Wall Street. Wall Street contributed far more money to Obama than they did to McCain. I think he's a willing partner at the dance. He wanted to be president. They paid for him to go to the dance, and he's dancing with them.
Now, Max Kaiser, let me get you back in on this. So what's your take on what Professor Foote has just said, and of course referring to some things that you have on your own website? What does it mean when he says that how much of this is real? If it's not real, what exactly is it? And what would be the goal of actually creating this situation?
Well, the goal is to keep interest rates as cheap as possible, to make the cost of borrowing and speculating as cheap as possible. The cost for borrowing for hedge funds and players on Wall Street is actually negative 2% when you factor in all the subsidies and the giveaways that the Obama administration has given the banking industry. But one of the ways, for example, that they lie or they create a false reality, just look at this labor number here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said that labor, the employment numbers are up 224,000, but that's a lie. In fact, the numbers actually, if you look at the not at the payroll survey, but at the household survey, which is the more broader, accurate term, the actual number is down 200,000. So they go on there. They're operating, you know, they're state-owned media outlets like Fox News. They state a bold-faced lie. Ben Bernanke takes that lie and incorporates it into a completely fallacious Federal Reserve policy outcome, which are to keep interest rates low. And everyone wonders why unemployment's skyrocketing and the economy is falling apart. Because they have false data. The Bureau of Labor Statistics issues false data. The CPI number is false. The productivity number is false. This is what happens when you have corporations and banks merge with the White House to create neo-fascism. It's called fascism. We know what it is. We've seen it before. It's kind of a soft fascism where people can buy an iPad and tune in to how they're being fascistically destroyed. And they kind of dig that if you're a kid, because you can watch yourself being, you know, destroyed in real time, and they think it's a game. But let's not kid ourselves. This is the modern equivalent of what Mussolini correctly identified of the merger of corporations and politicians to create fascism. This is what we're talking about. And Fox News and the other outlets are the state apparatchiks that report the false news.
All right, Mr. Dobwitz, let me get you back in on this. What's your perspective on what Mr. Kaiser just said? Do you agree with this being created in order for others to make a profit? How do you see what is exactly going on in the U.S. in dealing with its economy?
Well, first of all, as a labor historian and a political scientist, I would differ with the description of this as being fascism. I think we should save that word for the real thing. And I think it's also indicative of discourse on the United States that when you look at the three players, you look at the government and you look at the corporations and the financial sector, the third player that is common throughout the industrialized democratic societies in the West is organized labor and the employees that Max Kaiser seems to be so worried about. These people should have agency. They should be involved in the decision-making process. They're not. This is a process, a gradual undermining and weakening of the majority of the American population since the 1950s and 60s. The Democratic Party unfortunately played an important and active role in weakening organized labor to a large extent. And I really take issue with this use of fascism, because fascism is something different. We can have a discussion on that if we want, but I think it's more important to look at who is going to solve the problem. Once we've got all the facts about the interlocking of the corporate world with the political world, what about the third party that is not being discussed whatsoever? That is organized labor, or the lack thereof.
So then your key, what you think the key to this problem now, Mr. Darbus, is organized labor coming up again in the ranks?
Unfortunately, no. So I'm very pessimistic. I think one of the solutions you'll see in comparative economies like France or Germany or even the UK to an extent is that the Labour Party, the Social Democratic or Socialist Party, and the allied unions do play a very active role in not only in discourse but actually forcing through positive change. This is largely lacking in the United States, and I would say this is the major problem for the United States, and I think the electoral system here is probably one of the major problems for a lack of recovery of the labor movement.
Okay, now, Mr. Foote, we have a major situation. We had McDonald's actually getting a million
Just a minute. I'd like to disagree with that last point.
Go ahead.
I've been a labor leader for years. I was a voting delegate to statewide assemblies of the California Faculty Association, the California Teachers Association. What he said is totally wrong. We had almost zero public sector unions back in the 1950s. We're now up to 40% or more membership. The public sector unions and the payment to the public sector, the average salaries and so forth, are outrageously high. The private sector needs to be able to compete worldwide with companies in China and India and other places. We don't need more labor union interference in the economy. He is stretching beyond belief.
So basically we need deregulation of the labor market as well as the rest of the economy.
Well, Mr. Foote, what do you see the key to this being? What is the key to solve this economic dilemma that is taking place in the U.S. in your perspective?
Step number one is to end the endless wars we have around the world. Cut the defense spending big time. Bring the soldiers home is the first thing that should be done.
Why do you think that the American people in general have not stood up together in unison, basically, when these figures are coming out from the administration and saying that the economy is recovering when the reality of their day-to-day lives definitely point to something else? Why do you think that is the case?
Well, I think the problem is what Professor Foote is talking about. People can only act collectively when they're organized collectively, and his basically neoliberal position about further deregulating the labor market is part of the problem. We can talk about international wars and talk about these problems of unwise decisions in the Middle East and in Afghanistan, etc. But on the ground at home, what we need to see is a stronger collective organization of the people. Individuals do not respond. Organized, collectivized people respond. The economies that have a strong labor movement are the ones that are bouncing back more rapidly. If he wants to further deregulate the labor market, I think he's going to cause further pain and suffering amongst the American people.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I would have loved to hear your respond, Professor Foote, but we're out of time. I'd like to thank all my guests at the program, Mr. Eugene Darbus, Chairman, Political Science Department, Notre Dame University, Paul Sheldon Foote, Professor, California State University, and financial journalist Max Kaiser from Paris, who we had and didn't have a couple of times. Sorry about that. Well, thank you, viewers, anyway, for being with us, and hopefully join us right here, same time, same place, tomorrow for another one of tomorrow's top headline stories. Well, I'm Marzia Hashimi signing out for myself and all the crew right here in Tehran. Thanks so much for being with us, and goodbye.